Okay, we're going to talk about font shadows. So I'm going to drag a font down into my scene tree here, and we're going to just reposition this really quick. I'll just leave the default font white as it is right now. So we're going to go into the shadow tab and talk about how to create shadows with your fonts. If you notice right below the little shadow tab, there's a little box, a gray box here. You can turn that on, and once you do that, it creates a shadow. Now we also have this icon again to the right of it with this little drop down arrow. And if we drop that down, you notice in this particular case we don't have any extra blurs or outlines that we can use. So this font is not a good case for us. In order to get a shadow, you'll need to import a font with the different outlines and or blurs on it. So if you watched our importing the fonts tutorial, you can see that we imported a font here that carried with it a couple of blurs and or outlines with it as well. So let's replace this font, the Arial Black, with the lighter Arial Regular. It keeps the text, it keeps the font when we replaced it. Now with this little drop down we have additional options here. So we have a blur 1, a blur 2, a blur 3, and a blur 4. So we can choose whichever blur we want to use for the shadow here. So let's use blur 2 or blur 1. And below that we also have the direction that we can set, so we can change the direction of it. We have the distance, how far we want to offset that font. And we also have Z offset, which will push the shadow back into Z space. We have a color, so we can change the color of the shadow right here. We also have an alpha, so we can adjust the alpha setting of the font as well. Again, there's a geometry setting, a texture setting, a path, and a razor setting, just like there was in the basic tab. We also have a quality, which is set to normal by default. There's also a high quality as well. So the shadow doesn't just have to be limited to these blurred fonts. We can also use one of the outlines as a shadow too. So we change it here to outline 3, and again we have the same options that we can